The Delta Music Museum in downtown Ferriday draws international visitors to the small town of 3,000 residents. Ferriday has an outsized reputation as the hometown of Jerry Lee Lewis and his cousins Mickey Gilley and Jimmy Swaggart. I'm taking you on a tour of the museum, which is a featured stop along the Mississippi Blues Trail.
Every morning I wake up with the blues.
YZ Ely is in his late 80s and still performs his signature Delta blues tunes that helped put Ferriday on the musical map. In the 1950s, YZ performed at Haney's Big House as the house band opening for big-name acts traveling the Chitlin Trail, a performance circuit for black musicians.
We had the opportunity to be the opening act for guys like B.B. King, Lil Milton, Larry Birdsong, Big Joe Turner, Elder James. I'm honored to have had that privilege to be the opening act for such big known band.
Today, YZ is playing in an exhibit that pays homage to his legacy at the Delta Music Museum and Arcade Theater in downtown Ferriday. Hi.
Karen, nice to see you. Welcome to the Delta Music Museum. I think you're going to be really glad you came today. This is a great little jewel that houses a lot of musical history that all happened in this tiny little town. You are in the old Ferriday post office. This old building was built in 1939 by the WPA, and a local gentleman saved the building. It was going to be torn down and donated it to the state of Louisiana. The Secretary of State's office for the state of Louisiana operates this museum, and we're just very fortunate that we get to honor our three famous cousins that are from this town. Of course, Reverend Jimmy Swaggart, one of the first televangelists on television, Mickey Gilley, urban cowboy, and of course the killer Jerry Lee Lewis. All born in the year 1935, learned to play in the Pentecostal church, and everybody knew them around town. There's some other stuff I'd like to show you too here, in addition to the
let's take a walk. During the 1950s, blues, gospel, and country music in the Delta region converged in a musical mashup known as rockabilly. The museum honors these genres and musicians with ties to Louisiana. Ferriday's claim to fame begins with the birth of Jerry Lee Lewis, a pianist, singer, and songwriter nicknamed The Killer, rock and roll's first great wild man.
He was a good old homegrown boy. He always was introduced, and that was part of what he would tell everybody. Jerry Lee Lewis from Ferriday, Louisiana. That's what he always wanted, and he got it.
Sherry McMahon helped foster the museum in its infancy. It's a tribute to her famous cousins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Jimmy Swaggart, and Mickey Gilley.
It was like a vortex. Just met here, and those mamas got pregnant with those babies. There will never be anybody else like them in the world. But Jerry Lee, there will never be another killer. We do hope people will come and see all the exhibits here of all the fabulous people.
Ferriday is the unlikely wellspring of talent with local and regional ties. Country singer Conway Twitty lived in nearby Tallulah. An exhibit of his stage costumes, awards, and records stand alongside exhibits of living legend Irma Thomas, tributes to Frogman Henry from New Orleans, who was the opening act for the Beatles, and Louisiana Hayride radio star Johnny Horton.
The principal genres of music that went into making early rock and roll and rockabilly music were gospel, country music, and rhythm and blues. And all of that was in abundance right here in this central part of the Mississippi Delta. People latched onto it. There was just something in the soil, as they say.
Delta Blues is at the core of Ferriday's musical legacy, fostered by Haney's Big House, which put on Sunday night shows.
Mr. Will Haney, we loved him. I grew up about 3 blocks from his juke joint. I would hear the music from Mr. Will Haney's wafting in the window, and that's where Jerry Lee would sneak in.
This is our replica of the famous, internationally famous, Haney's Big House. It was the launching pad for the greatest musical artist of the day. This was a place where people like Ray Charles, B.B. King, Little Richard. They all played at Haney's Big House because it was on what was known as the Chitlin Circuit.
The birth of the blues came from slavery. The way of life of slavery, the only, in my point of view, is to find a peace of mind, was to just sing and harmonize. It gives me the privilege is to hold on to something that belonged to me and belonged to my race.
The old Arcade Theater stands next door to the museum, and on this day, we find artist Grantham Molnar painting the murals of Ferriday's musical roots. The theater serves as a community gathering space for culture and arts events. Admission is free, and marketing is by word of mouth. Yet somehow, international tourists find their way to downtown Ferriday. Many superfans of these celebrated musical greats.
What is it about Ferriday that breeds all this homegrown talent, these musical greats?
I don't know, it's just something in the Delta. It drifted into Ferriday, up the river or down the river. It just raised a whole lot of talent.